My name is Anat Bernstein-Reich. I'm the chairperson of Israel Sri Lanka Chamber of Commerce. I'm also the vice president of the Israel Asia Chamber of Commerce. And we are gathered today as we enter the year 2021 to talk about Sri Lanka in this coming year. What are the business opportunity, investment opportunities? We have special guests from Israel and Sri Lanka joining us today. We have Mr. Ambassador of Sri Lanka with us, Mr. Varuna Vilpata. And we have guests from BOI, Board of Investment in Sri Lanka. Thanks for joining us all the way from Sri Lanka. And also we have here guests from our Chamber of Commerce, from our participating and collaborators, SID, the Society for International Development. Good morning, Alon.
Hi, good morning.
And we have Mr. Kenigsberg, an entrepreneur working in Sri Lanka, but presently in Israel. I hope that our honorary consul from Sri Lanka will join us soon, with Mr. Vicky Vikramatunga. And this morning, we'd like to put the focus on Sri Lanka. We look at India, and when you look down a little bit, the drop that goes down is Sri Lanka, a country that I associated with for over 20 years. And as we go in this seminar, I'll tell you more about my personal affiliation with Sri Lanka. I'd like to invite you, Mr. Ambassador, to say a few greeting words. Please, Mr. Ambassador.
Thank you, Anat. Ayubowan and shalom, everybody. First of all, let me express my profound appreciation to Mrs. Anat Bernstein-Reich, the chairperson of Israel Sri Lanka Chamber of Commerce, and Mr. Matan Vilnai, the president of Israel Asia Chamber of Commerce, for agreeing to organize and host this webinar today. Thank you. I also wish to express my sincere thanks to Mr. Prasanjit Vijaytilaka, the Executive Director, Investment Promotion of the Board of Investment of Sri Lanka, and his colleagues for their participation today. Let me also acknowledge the presence of Mr. Vicky Vikramatunga, the Honorary Consul of Israel in Sri Lanka, and Mr. Samuel Kinigsberg, the Chairman of Ken Globe Lanka Private Limited, and for devoting your valuable time to be with us today and to learn about the investment opportunities available in Sri Lanka. As you're probably aware, Sri Lanka is open for foreign direct investment in a number of sectors, such as mega infrastructure development projects, including Colombo Port City and Colombo Financial City projects, and other sectors such as pharmaceutical, agriculture, manufacturing, water management, IT, graphene, and high-tech industries. But I'm not going to spend much time on that, as my colleagues from BOI will talk all these in detail and explain as to why you need to consider Sri Lanka as your next investment destination. However, I would like to stress on two important points to highlight some of the advantages available to foreign investors in Sri Lanka. The first point is the strategic location of Sri Lanka on one of the busiest international shipping routes in close proximity to the Indian subcontinent. This unique geographical location gives a huge competitive edge in logistics to the foreign investors in Sri Lanka in manufacturing sector, as they have an easy access to the vast market in the region. There is another advantage in terms of market access for foreign investors who are looking for setting up their manufacturing plants in Sri Lanka, as they can make use of Sri Lanka's existing free trade agreements with India, Pakistan, and Singapore to have tariff-free access to those markets. Apart from that, Sri Lanka enjoys GSP plus benefits from the European Union and the GSP benefits from the United States of America. It is also important to mention here that Sri Lanka is currently negotiating a number of FTAs with several other countries, including China, Thailand, Indonesia, and Malaysia. Once Sri Lanka conclude all those free trade agreements, I think there is a vast market available for Sri Lanka investors in Sri Lanka. You will hear all these information in detail from my BOI colleagues, and in concluding my remarks, I invite all of you to invest in Sri Lanka. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. I'd like to pass the mic to Mr. Alon Be'er, CEO of SID, Society for International Development, our partner in this event. Alon.
Hi, thank you, Anat, and thank you for again inviting us to join forces with you, and nice to meet you, Mr. Ambassador, and our friends from the Board of Investment in Sri Lanka, and to the other participants. I will do it very briefly. We are an umbrella organization with over 150 members who are coming from the business sector, the governmental sector, the NGO sector, and the academia, when our main goal is to promote Israeli involvement in emerging markets, involvements that bring mutual benefits for both sides, creating impact in both sides. And we are doing so through three main channels. One is working with the Israeli government to create an Israeli strategy through allowing and supporting Israeli activities in emerging markets. We are doing it through capacity building, seminars, and other activities that aimed to give concrete tools to Israeli NGOs and companies in regard the way they can take part in activities in those markets. And we are doing it through public activities and media work that should convince the Israeli public about the importance of the Israeli involvement in those markets. I will say that when we are talking about Israeli activity in emerging markets, we like to use the term partnerships. Part of the problems that we believe is a gap to Israelis when they are aiming to enter such a new market is that they need local partners. They need to understand what are the needs in the market, and they need to know that in a lot of cases, this is a bit more complicated than coming for a moment, selling a product, and running back home. You need to create a solution for a need, and this is the terminology that we are trying to use. And as I always say in those events, and this will be my last sentence, the test of all of us, the success of those meetings will be to see results on the ground, to see more Israelis that are active on the ground with local partners in long-term commitment and activities. And I hope that during this seminar, we will understand a bit more about the needs, and later on with Anat and with the other friends, we will be able to deliver the message to the community of Israelis who are potentially players in those fields. So thank you all.
Thank you, Alon, for your partnership. I appreciate it. And I hope to have more partnerships with you. I'd like to introduce to the audience also Mrs. Liron Orman, the Managing Director of the Israel-Asia Chamber of Commerce, our umbrella organization. You spoke about umbrella organization. We are also umbrella for 15 Asian countries. And Liron, why don't you say hi to the audience?
Hi, good morning, everybody. So happy that you join us. I would like to invite all of you to be in touch with me, to let me know about your business in Israel to Asia and Asia to Israel, and to join us, to join our chamber.
Thank you. Danny, you burst into the picture, and it's good because you can say hi. Mr. Daniel Catareves, Director of International at the Israel Manufacturers Association, another partner of our chamber. Danny?
Yes, well, thank you very much. I'm sorry, I cannot say that there were traffic jam on the way because we are only in Zoom, but there was some other traffic, so I was a bit late. But I'm very happy to be here today and certainly to participate together with the chamber and with SEED, which we are very much involved also. I think that the opportunities in Sri Lanka are certainly not enough known to the Israeli business community, and I think that this is a very good opportunity for actually highlighting and what are the possibilities of working together for the benefit both of Sri Lanka and of Israel. So I'm eager to listen and to learn more, and I will be more than happy to disseminate the information among our members and to continue the cooperation by actually strengthening, deepening, and enlarging the relation between Israel and Sri Lanka, the business community of Israel and the business community of Sri Lanka. And I thank again both the Chamber and SEED for the excellent work they are doing, and we are trying to develop those relations. Thank you very much, Ambassador.
Thank you, Danny. Thanks for joining us today. So I think that we now want to hear about Sri Lanka. We want to hear more what are the business opportunities, the economic outlook, and I'd like to pass the mic to you, Board of Investment in Sri Lanka. We have with us Mr. Prasanjit Vijaya Tilake, Executive Director of the Investment Promotion. And if you can present your team to us, then I'm passing the mic to you.
Hi, so good morning to everybody over there, and good afternoon to anybody who's dialing in from Sri Lanka. Firstly, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak with you and to engage with the community, even online. I see a lot of new faces and a very, very familiar face in His Excellency the Ambassador, who has always been a very close ally of the BOI in taking our message of Sri Lanka as an investment destination out into the world. So it's a pleasure to connect with all of you. And I hope that, I'll be covering both aspects in terms of the economic outlook, as well as the investment opportunities. I've compiled it in one deck for continuity. And I hope that you will find this interesting. And I look forward to engaging with you post-presentation as well. So I'll just share the screen right now. And I'll
And if you can later share with us,
can you see this?
Then we will circulate.
Can you? Certainly. Let me just confirm if everybody can see this in presentation mode.
Yes.
Screen?
Yes.
Excellent. So this is basically a country snapshot of Sri Lanka. So when you say, one thing that we want to emphasize here is the fact that we already have a number of foreign businesses, foreign-owned businesses. And when I say foreign-owned, as much as 100% foreign-owned businesses established in Sri Lanka, and that have been operating for a number of years. These are across multiple sectors. So if you take the manufacturing sector itself, it has a number of subsectors ranging from manufacturing, let's say, ships, to something as small as a tablet, a pharmaceutical product, and everything in between. To IT, ICT, there's tourism and hospitality, food processing, logistics, even education. So there's a number of subsectors, and each of these subsectors is enriched by international investment. Sri Lanka has invested close to $7 billion in the last, if you take the period 2015 to date, and we're a founder member of the World Bank's multilateral investment guarantee agency. The organization that I represent, the BOI, we were established by Act of Parliament in 1978. So that means we are counting 40 plus years. We are one of the most mature IPAs in the agency, in this part of the world. And we were modeled where the Singapore's EDB was used as a benchmark. So it's a very robust, institution. And if you look at the right-hand side of the screen, you will see that Sri Lanka is home to 4 of the world's top 10 hotels. We have 3 of Asia Pacific's top 20 telcos. We have 3 of the top 10 global construction companies. We have the #1 software company of the top 10 here in the world. We have the world's #1 tire manufacturer, and we have 7 of 2020's Fortune 500. So as you can see, it's a small island, as Ms. Anat mentioned at the start, that we're that little drop at the end of the Indian subcontinent. But this is a little drop that packs a lot of punch. You will see why as I proceed on to the next slide. Now, one of the key elements that makes Sri Lanka as attractive as it is our talent pool. So we have a highly versatile, multi-skilled workforce, but quite cost competitive, especially in this region, not just compared to countries in the Western Hemisphere, but if you take Asian countries and East Asian countries, Sri Lanka is very cost competitive. And we are very trainable. The average Sri Lankan worker is very good at absorbing new knowledge fast. They take on new technology with a very small, a lower gestation period than average. They communicate well, and best is that they are very good at following instructions. So the facts on this screen just give you an idea of how all that comes about. We have a number of tertiary and vocational education institutes. We have over 100,000 trained students by TVEC annually. We have 15 state universities, 19 higher education institutes, 30,000 graduates per year. We have the second largest pool of UK qualified accountants outside of the UK. Now, all of this is from just 22 million people. We are #1 in South Asia in terms of literacy. We are second for compulsory secondary education. In terms of public, primary, secondary, and higher education, all of this is free to all citizens. And being a former colony, I suppose, English is widely spoken in this country, and it's considered as the main or primary business language. I will now talk a little bit about doing business in Sri Lanka. On my first slide itself, and I said we already have over 1,000 international companies here in Sri Lanka, you would understand that it is a business environment that is relatively easy to navigate. It's easy to set up. It's quite straightforward. And it's a well-connected environment. We're ranked second in this region for starting a business. We're second in the region again for quality of infrastructure. We're second in South Asia for protecting minority investors. We're the first in South Asia in terms of doing business. And we have a B grade from all major credit rating agencies. We have ratified 41 ILO conventions, including the 8 core conventions. And we have signed bilateral investment protection agreements with 28 countries. Now, this gives you an idea that Sri Lanka is a well-established destination for you to start a business. Moving on, in terms of competitiveness and productivity, I spoke of the qualitative angle of the Sri Lankan labor force a couple of slides ago. Now we're talking about the value for money factor. So what you leverage on is the skilled workforce at a comparatively lower cost, which brings you top value for money. Now we're ranked second in South Asia in terms of the Global Competitiveness Index. We are first in South Asia for human capital, second for global innovation, and we have the lowest power cost in South Asia. And this is not me saying it. This is the Japanese who've done a survey. This is a JETRO survey. Now, on the right-hand side of the screen, you have a table with comparative wage rates. And you will see that, again, if you look at the countries that we've mentioned here, we've stuck to comparative investment destinations. So as an investor, you would look at any one of these countries if you were looking at setting up in this part of the world. You will see here again, we may not be the cheapest or the lowest value labor, but we are one but lowest. But you will also see that in terms of the increase, you will see that there has, even while we have been increasing, we are still very cost competitive. And the value for money factor there again, it goes without saying. Now, along with this, so while establishing that Sri Lanka is a strong base, let me now tell you what this strong base entitles you to. Now that is where we start talking about market access. So now, if you take the larger parts of the world, in terms of export markets from Sri Lanka, the US, the European Union, and Asia would be the top three. The US is probably one of our largest trading partners in terms of exports. In terms of the EU, being located in Sri Lanka entitles you to exporting under the GSP Plus scheme. So that you're looking at a market of close upon 500 million people if you're including the UK. And this is our second largest trading partner. You look at around 6,000 tariff lines at zero duty, which can access 27 countries in the EU. Sri Lanka is also, we are signatory to free trade agreements with India, Pakistan, and Singapore. And you will see here on the right side of the screen, over 4,000 tariff lines to India, over 4,500 tariff lines to Pakistan. Zero restrictions, all items into Singapore. Local value addition of 35%. Very, very favorable terms in international trade. Now here, if you look at 1.3 billion in India, 195 million or so in Pakistan, and a large migrant population as well as the local population in Singapore, you're looking at about 1.5 billion consumers. Remember I mentioned the EU, that's another 500 million. So you're looking at preferential trade access to close to 2 billion consumers, a market of 2 billion individuals. And if you take 1.3 billion in India, that is the largest growing economy in this part of the world. It has the largest expanding middle class in the world. So these are markets with a lot of depth. And you have preferential access to these markets from Sri Lanka. Now, what I hope the gentleman who's actually established in Sri Lanka will touch a little bit more on would be this segment, the quality of life. I know that you get a number of Israeli visitors to the southern coast as well as the eastern coast for surfing and aquatic sports. So in terms of a holiday destination, Sri Lanka may be somewhat familiar to you. Don't take my word for it. Sri Lanka truly is a great place to work and live. There's a number of international publications that have identified Colombo as one of the most cosmopolitan locations in South Asia. We are ranked the most peaceful country in South Asia. We are first in South Asia for human development. We are first in South Asia for quality of life, as well as for healthcare. And along with this comes competitive infrastructure. So if you look at the infrastructure perspective, a number of the preceding governments, they have kept investing in enabling infrastructure to make Sri Lanka attractive for the investor. So you're looking at, we have 2 international seaports, we have 3 international airports, a rapidly expanding expressway network to make each corner of the island that much shorter. And we have 13 fully-fledged export processing zones, which are under the purview of the BOI. Now, a little bit more about what that infrastructure provides you with in terms of transportation. You see that you have 33 major shipping lines calling at Colombo Port. We were among the top 25 world container ports for 2019. The 2020 indices is not out yet. 75% of port volumes are transshipment. So this gives you an idea of what a significant trading hub Sri Lanka is in this part of the world. We're one of the countries with the highest liner shipping connectivity index in terms of increases. We were the first in South Asia, the first in this part of the world to cater to the latest EEE class ships. And we have a new container terminal under development that will boost throughput. In terms of aviation, you will see that I remember I mentioned the booming Indian market of 1.3 billion people. Well, 1/3 of the flights that depart weekly are to India. We have over 300,000 metric tons of capacity for cargo handling. And we are in the process of expanding passenger handling capacity to up to 20 million people, which is a target we hope to achieve in 2025. This number may be revised based on the travel industry's present situation. These are pre-COVID numbers. But why we've retained the number is simply because our investment in infrastructure to facilitate 20 million passengers will continue despite the impact of COVID. You will see the weekly flight schedules. We've just put a small sample there on the screen, just so that you get an idea of the connectivity out of Sri Lanka. In a couple of days, you can get to most.
Prasanna, I'd like to stop you here for a second. And since Israel has now diplomatic relations with the Emirates, your weekly flight schedule is very interesting for us because we see flights going through to Dubai and to Abu Dhabi. And we have now daily flights to Dubai and soon also to Abu Dhabi that can connect us very easily to Sri Lanka. So for us, in addition, of course, to the Indian hubs that connect to India, to Sri Lanka, it's very important for us to look at the flights through the Emirates. Will make it much quicker to get to Sri Lanka. And until we have direct flights, or at least semi-direct flights, I think that we should look at the Emirates as
a great alternative, yes.
Alternative that will allow us to reach Sri Lanka easily. Please go ahead. I had to mention that.
That's an excellent point. Thank you, Anna. So if I were to move to the next slide, this again is something very important to the investor, the fiscal picture. So one of the main things that successive governments have been consistent about is simplifying the tax system. So there have been some tax reforms in 2018, some others at the end of 2019, early 2020. So what we've identified is certain sectors that need to be boosted through concessionary corporate income tax rates. And we've also gone as far as to exempt or identify zero income tax sectors, such as agriculture in terms of farming, information technology, and export services. Sri Lanka also has a very strict intellectual property regime. So when you set up in Sri Lanka, there is a guarantee that your neighboring factory or one of your ex-employees is not in a legal position to go copy your technology or to copy your product. So in that sense, your investment in R&D is secure here in Sri Lanka. In fact, the focus on R&D is so much that there is a 100% deduction of the amount spent on R&D from your taxable income. There is a zero tax rate for dividends paid. We have also signed 45 double taxation avoidance agreements. Now, if you look at the table on the left, you will see that at its regular corporate income tax rate, Sri Lanka is competitive at 24%, but at the concessionary rate of 14%, we give you a significant wedge, a significant advantage, even against benchmark investment destinations such as Thailand and Vietnam. And these are no special, and this is purely by virtue of being a manufacturer. So this fiscal picture has turned out to be quite attractive, placing Sri Lanka, I would say, a step ahead of its regional competition, making it a value for money destination in terms of your capital expenditure. Now, with this background, I will move to the second part of the presentation, which is the investment opportunities in Sri Lanka. So I will go through this to make it a little bit more interesting in terms of actual opportunities. We will introduce the focus sectors and then talk about the ability to participate in some of these opportunities and how you can get involved as an audience. So we have 5 priority sectors to drive FDIs that we have identified in terms of manufacturing, in terms of ICT, hospitality and tourism, there's agriculture and food processing, and then there's construction and infrastructure. So under manufacturing, you will see subsectors. There's pharmaceuticals, there's high value added textile and apparel, there's electronics and electricals. In terms of ICT, we are looking at the knowledge sectors, knowledge services piece, the software development, there's IT training institute. So it's across the value chain. In terms of hospitality and tourism, again, if I were to touch on this sector a little bit more in detail, Sri Lanka has won numerous accolades for as a hospitality destination or as a travel destination, as an experiential tourism destination over the last 10 years, I would say. From the Condé Nast Traveler to Nat Geo to, I think, even publications such as Bloomberg, the Lonely Planet, a number of travel magazines, travel websites, they have recognized Sri Lanka as one of the best locations to visit. So at the moment, the industry itself is consolidating its capacity because we are experiencing low volumes due to the impact of COVID. So that when international travel does open up, each of these subsectors here, from agro to ecotourism, adventure tourism, luxury hotels, to the MICE picture, all of that. And again, as I said, I think the tourism piece is something where we've seen growing numbers of Israeli tourists coming in, especially for the surfing here in Sri Lanka. In terms of agriculture and food processing, this is again a sector where we are trying to strengthen internal capacity. We want to grow move from being just a produce exporter to move along the value chain, create more local value addition, both in terms of fishery and other agricultural products. Construction and infrastructure, we're looking at transport infrastructure, we're looking at port and aviation development. So what we're looking at here is, again, opportunities to create infrastructure that will serve as an enabler for FDI. So we're looking at FDI-friendly infrastructure. So, for example, development in port means we become a better logistics hub. If we become a better logistics hub, we are more attractive to a manufacturer basing themselves in Sri Lanka. So it's related infrastructure, very important. Now, having identified the priority sectors, let me now talk about some of the opportunities in these priority sectors. So the textile zone, let me give you a little bit of history as to why this textile zone becomes a critical project. In Sri Lanka's manufacturing sector, the apparel sector is more or less the poster child of a manufacturing sector. Out of national exports of between 11.5 and 12 billion, around $4 billion comes out of the textile sector. Now, Sri Lanka has gained a significant reputation since the late 1980s as a high quality, ethical manufacturing destination when it comes to garment and fabric products. So, having said that, the government has identified that at today's competitive piece rates, we find a number of the components that go into the final product are imported. So what we're trying to do here is increase the contribution percentage to the end product by expanding the country's raw material base. So you're looking at both an import substitution drive, as well as by increasing your local manufacturing capacity. What you also do is you qualify for greater rules of origin criteria in terms of the EU GSP Plus and other preferential trade agreements. Along with this comes certain logistic benefits such as shorter lead times, your increasing foreign exchange earnings. So, and as this being such a mature industry in Sri Lanka, a flagship industry, I would say, while the zone is still at concept stage and we're getting approvals for the land and we're doing some of the primary infrastructure needed, we already have I would say we have 7 investors who have already expressed interest. Now, this is for a range of products, from fabrics to fibers, other textile materials. What we're looking at is a dedicated zone, which will be developed in 2 phases of 100 acres and then possibly another additional 200 acres. From a similar school of thought is the idea of the pharmaceutical zone, this time in the southern part of the country, in Hambantota, which is again in very close proximity to a seaport. This zone 2 will be developed in 200-acre slots in 2 phases. Now, Israel being what it is in terms of R&D when it comes to the medical field, I believe this might be of extra interest to some of the listeners, some of our audience joining in today. And here again, it's a 2-fold economic benefit that the country has prioritized. Number 1 is creating an independent export vertical, ideally 4 to 5 years down the line. We're looking at $1 billion export vertical there. And number 2 is once again import substitution. If you look at some of the data in the bottom right hand of the screen, you will see Sri Lanka imports a significant pharmaceutical bill at the end of each year. One of the reasons for this is that Sri Lanka offers free healthcare to all its citizens. Therefore, at any given time, 50% of our import bill is for the state sector. If you consider this number of 664 million, which is for 2019, I could tell you that's a relatively lower figure. In 2017, it was $750 million. So at the moment, the projected compound average growth rate for this sector is around 8 to 10%. And the local industry currently only supplies 15% of that. So which means 85% of a growing import bill is import dependent. So the main purpose behind this zone is to create local capacity. And along with this, there is a long-term target where we will increase this 15% supply to 40% by 2025. Now, for the investor, what this guarantees is a captive market. You can play in a captive market of circa $750 million inside Sri Lanka. In addition to that, you have the opportunity to export out of one of the most attractive logistical destinations in Sri Lanka, in the world, sorry. So other fringe benefits we expect are new employment opportunities, different types of specialized employment opportunities, skills transfer, technology transfer, and of course, import substitution. So this again is a very critical project. Number of approvals are already obtained. Land has been invested to the BOI. This will fall under Sri Lanka's Strategic Development Project Act, which gives a number of additional benefits over and above the standard incentives given by the Board of Investment. We'll be happy to discuss this in detail if there's anyone of interest who wishes to take this offline subsequent to today's webinar. And again, a critical project, which I personally think would be of significance to the Israeli investor community. In terms of rubber, Sri Lanka can be considered the, you could almost call it the rubber capital or the solid tire capital, I would say, of South Asia. At any given time, Sri Lanka is home to 6 to 8 of the top 10 tire manufacturers in the world. We have the world's #1 Michelin, who acquired one of the local players last year. We have from Continental to Trelleborg. We have a number of the really big names in this industry here in Sri Lanka. Now, so having recognized the potential here, the government has again identified a location in the Western province to set up a dedicated rubber manufacturing zone, where we would ideally like to grow beyond the rubber, the current rubber subsectors of solid tires, pneumatic tires, and gloves. We are looking at other high-value products. We are looking at increasing local yield. So here's an opportunity again. Israel is very high on tech. So if there's an opportunity to introduce technology to increase yield, you will see that's an ambitious boost. And then, of course, increasing employment. And then thereby doubling exports in our vision for 2025. If you look at the IT sector, there's a number of new IT centers to be developed, which were introduced in last year's budget in November. We're looking at growing the current export base from 1.2 billion to either double or almost triple by 2025. We're looking at enhancing employment 2 to 3 times. And very important down there again is the startup ecosystem that we're trying to create, where we'll double the number of startups in the country. We want to look at developing niche expertise areas. We want to build expertise in emerging technologies. And this is the sector that sees the highest demand for employment opportunities from the Sri Lankan market. So again, this is a sector that is very, very rich with a lot of depth for investment. In terms of agri-processing and aquaculture, I will not dwell too long on this. What I will tell you is that Sri Lanka has favorable weather almost year-round. We have sufficient rainfall. We have 60% of our ground is arable land. We are an island with a coastline of 1,700 kilometers. There's 70,000 hectares of low-lying delta land, and some of the best, I mean, if you take from tuna to crab, some of the best seafood in the world originates from our waters. If you take crops, Ceylon tea is famous. If you take Sri Lanka, the Ceylon cinnamon, again, it's a very famous essence. And Ceylon pepper, Sri Lanka pepper. I mean, so if you take some of these niche crops, you will find that the best of the world comes from Sri Lanka, originates from Sri Lanka. So here again, there are opportunities for technology, for new thinking, for higher value addition, and obviously not only FDI, but also great opportunities for ROI in a number of subsectors across agriculture and aquaculture. So we have here, in terms of the leisure sector, we have a couple of specific opportunities available in the country at the moment. investment opportunities in the second oldest hotel in South Asia, to be part of Colombo's first 5-star property, which has its origins in 1987. That is the Hilton Colombo. And then another luxury property, the Grand Hyatt. Now, each of these are structured investment opportunities that either an individual or a conglomerate could invest in. We also have a number of projects in terms of power and energy. This is mainly due to a focus of the government to increase the dependency on renewable energy, to increase the focus on renewable energy. So there's a solar park, there's a couple of wind power projects, and a combined cycle power plant as well. So these are, again, more structured opportunities beyond the concepts that were shared previously. And with that, this brings my presentation, my formal presentation, to a conclusion. What I would urge you to do is contact my colleague, who is the desk officer for Israel, Mr. Sudat Jaisekar. Please reach out to him if you have any clarifications, any queries in relation to this information that I have shared. We'd be more than happy to elaborate further and connect you with the right people to get set here in Sri Lanka. Let me once again thank you all for the opportunity to connect with you, for this opportunity to elaborate on what we have here in Sri Lanka. And both the embassy and the chamber, our thanks from the BOI for the opportunity extended to us. I hope this has been a useful presentation.
Thank you. Very, very informative presentation. And as said, this session is both recorded, and if you share the presentation with us, we'll circulate it to all the members of our chamber and our affiliate organizations, because there is a lot of information that you have mentioned, which is very important for us to know. There are a few questions, and I'll change a little bit the structure of our seminar today. There are several questions from the audience that I'd like to bring now to you because it's relevant. Can you talk a bit about the value of your local currency? The currency is rupee, is Sri Lankan rupee. What is the state of the rupee now?
Well, the rupee has seen somewhat of a decline for the better part of last year. This is mainly because I would say the second quarter, you would have seen our exports impacted due to various supply chain restrictions. And also one of our main foreign income earners, which is the tourism sector, which up until 2019 enjoyed a CAGR of something like 35%, that suffered. Mm-hmm. So this explains the decline in the rupee to a certain point in the last year, but it has since stabilized at around the 190 levels against the US dollar, which is our main trading currency.
Which means that it will be cheaper for me to come to Sri Lanka.
We anticipate with additional remittances coming in.
Okay, and just a sec. Can you say a few words about the COVID situation in Sri Lanka, something that is very interesting to all of us to know?
Of course. So we've started rolling vaccines out late last month. The numbers themselves, they fluctuate from time to time. But to a greater extent in terms of community spread, we have had, I would say we've had satisfactory control, given that a lot of commercial activity happens in highly populated areas. So it is more the citizens also taking responsibility for curtailing spread, because they understand that the economy has to move on, and that we cannot afford successive lockdowns like some of the bigger economies make. I would say COVID control, it's a bit of a tightrope that we're walking, but so far we haven't fallen off.
Actually, there was a research about the way countries in the world handled the COVID, and Sri Lanka was high in the countries that managed to manage their COVID. So congratulations.
In fact, number 10
It's very nice.
in the world, yeah.
I would ask our friends from BOIs to stay with us. I would like to pass the mic and discuss with you, Mr. Kenigsberg, or as I call you, Shmulik in Israel. Shmulik is a business person. I think that one of the few that is in Sri Lanka for how many years, Shmulik, now?
Almost 20 years.
20 years. Wow. So you're my guru to Sri Lanka. What do you do in Sri Lanka?
I export tuna fish, fresh tuna fish by air, to Europe and to Israel. Also export tea from Sri Lanka, and real estate, and represent some companies in Sri Lanka.
And do you live in Sri Lanka?
I have an office in Sri Lanka, an house in Sri Lanka, an apartment, and 1 month in Sri Lanka, 1 month in Israel. Last 20 years.
Wow. Wow. And during the corona, you were here, actually?
No, I'm in Israel, yes, yes.
Good. And why Sri Lanka? What brought you to Sri Lanka? I mean, there are very few Israelis working today in Sri Lanka. And what brought you there?
I like Sri Lanka. I like the people. And I try to make business, from far away, but it's not working. Then I come and I came to Sri Lanka and make the business from there. I have an office in Colombo and manage from there.
And what does the office do? I know of elephant tours.
Yes, also tourism. We send a lot of Israeli to Sri Lanka, tourists to Sri Lanka, also from Europe. And everybody likes Sri Lanka and want to come again also.
I agree, of course. I mean, let's talk about the difficulties, okay? And our friends in BOI showed us why to come to Sri Lanka. And I'm not asking you why not to come, because you're there and you want to stay in Sri Lanka, but what are the difficulties that you face? How did you manage them?
Sometimes it's take time to build a business, but when you build it, it's work. But we need patience, patience to till the things come to the correct way.
And you said that you are involved in real estate.
Yes.
How do you manage it? I mean, I know that, for example, foreign investor cannot invest more than 49% in real estate in Sri Lanka.
Yes, that's make the things very difficult. I have some properties there, of course, but it can be easy if we can make it 50-50 or 51 to a foreigner, because a lot of foreigners don't like this, to put all the money and to be only 49% registered there.
And then you use a proxy or local partner to join forces with you?
Yes, something like this, yes.
And what about reaching Sri Lanka? How do you do that?
Last 10 years through Istanbul, and it takes time, a long time, till Istanbul. From Israel, it's something like 2 hours. And after 11 hours, you have to go to the Maldives. And it's long time, but now I think it's going to be very easy through the Emirates. I know all the companies are going to Dubai, Abu Dhabi. It's going to take 8 or 9 hours.
So that will be much easier, and that relates to what we discussed a while back with Prasanjit. Talking about BOI, I understand that you have a BOI company.
Yes, I have a BOI company of real estate construction. Already built something in Sri Lanka, and hope to build more. But okay, now I only need to renew the resident visa and come again to Sri Lanka.
And Mr. Ambassador, I'd like to patch you to the discussion. To get a visa to Sri Lanka, supposed to be quite easy. Mr. Ambassador, I can't see you. Now
yes, of course, yes, it is very, very easy now because any traveler can apply for a visa through our immigration department's online portal. So it's a very, very simple process.
You do it online before traveling. You don't even need to reach the embassy for that.
Of course not.
Oh.
You can manage it by yourself online.
Okay, that's good. And talking about BOI, I'd like to pass the mic to you, Prasanjit, if you can turn on your mic because you're mute now. Just a sec. Oh, I see Mr. Ambassador. Prasanjit, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. I was wondering if you can explain to us what are the benefits of registering a BOI company? Because Shmulik all the time talks to me about that we need to register a BOI company, but why?
Well, depending on your area of activity, there'll be a number of different benefits. I would say the main benefit for any foreign investor is the comfort of constitutional guarantee of the safety of your investment. Because any agreement signed with the BOI, the conditions therein are valid for the lifetime of the project. So you are not affected by subsequent or retrospective, you're not retrospectively affected by changes in policy at a later date. So that would be, I would say that would be reason number one. Reason number two, if you're looking at a capital intensive project, could be real estate, could be something in manufacturing and so on. All of your imports, they come in free of customs duty.
Mm.
For a manufacturing project, the same applies for your raw material, as well as any other capital requirements on an ongoing basis for the lifetime of the project. When I say capital requirements, I'm talking about capital goods.
So you,
apart from this,
yeah, go ahead.
You get sorry, I'm sorry?
No, go ahead.
Yeah, and you, apart from this, you also get a certain, can I say, hand-holding when it comes to clearing whatever line agency approvals required for your particular area of activity. The BOI coordinates and facilitates approvals needed so that you can get your business off the ground. If you are locating in a, this is more evident, if you're locating in a BOI zone, there we are your primary as well as your sole point of contact for all approvals you need to get off the ground. The BOI is not only your landlord, the BOI is your primary and sole approving authority.
So a company that
I would say in a nutshell,
in Sri Lanka,
these are the benefits.
I'm saying again, so you're suggesting that a company that would like to invest in Sri Lanka should arrange a meeting with you first before getting to Sri Lanka to plan ahead?
Yes, they must.
Okay.
They must.
Good.
Exactly.
I just need to share with you that I registered a company called Bernshtein-Rייך Lanka. So soon I hope to visit you once we are able to travel to Sri Lanka.
Excellent. Very good news.
Let me see if we have a few minutes, and let's see if we have any more questions from the audience.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, of course, Danny, please do.
Can you elaborate, because we have Sid with us today here, and are there any projects which are financed by World Bank, by Asian Development Bank? I mean, do you have any, what is the situation when it comes to international financial institutions and their activity in Sri Lanka?
Well, in terms of ODA funding and ODA funded projects, These are usually in the infrastructure space. You would look at anything from, I would say, sanitation, water, in some cases, things like roadways, and more on the basic infrastructure side that you get the ODA funding focused on at the moment.
I have a question for you, Mr. Ambassador. Avner Tzin is asking whether Sri Lanka will accept our ammunition card, our green card that the Israelis are now issues. Is there any reciprocity in that sense?
You're talking about the green card of the people with vaccinations or vaccinated. Unfortunately, at the moment, there is no specific regulations on that. Whoever who comes, they have to come with negative PCR test results, irrespective of whether they have been vaccinated for COVID-19. And also, if a tourist comes, they can move into Sri Lanka Tourist Board approved Tier 1 hotels or Class 1 hotel, Class A hotel, and they can stay up to 14 days in that category of hotels. If they spend any more time beyond that 14 days period, they can move into other areas and other hotels.
Okay.
That is
will be removed soon because once we are vaccinated, we want to be free to travel and really do business. And we enjoy your hotels, but
thank you. Hopefully we will be able to accommodate that. I mean, it depends on the situation, ground situation in Sri Lanka, as well as the international situation. But with time, I'm sure there will be some sort of accommodation.
Yeah. The same question is asked by Meir from LR, and I think that Mr. Ambassador already replied to this question. Any more questions from the audience? We have a lot of travel agencies joining us today, and they look forward for Sri Lanka to open up. So all of us actually. And as I told Mr. Ambassador, and I invite all our audience today, once it opens and once we can travel, we are planning a business delegation to come to Sri Lanka. We already had 3 business delegations, very successful ones. And I hope with your leadership, Mr. Ambassador, we will come again and we will visit BOI as we did in previous trips. But we're waiting. We are, most of us, already vaccinated. And I understand that India passed a vaccine to Sri Lanka recently.
Of course, yes. We got about 500,000 vaccinations from India end of January, and I think we have already vaccinated around closer to 200,000 almost. And I must say here that Sri Lanka is open for international tourists, foreign tourists, since January 27. So under the tourism protocol, safety protocols, any traveler can visit Sri Lanka now. We are open. We are open for foreign travelers at the moment.
Yes, keep in mind that it's good that Israel have vaccinations, but in most of the world, people are not vaccinated. So at the end of the day, as the ambassador said, there are other solutions. And India is a great example because I think that all data of COVID is reducing dramatically without vaccination. So at the end of the day, we will need to manage the world, even if not everyone will be vaccinated. Otherwise, we will stay at home.
Before
of course.
I brought the map of Sri Lanka in front of us just to get us into perspective. And all of us talk about Colombo, which is in the west coast of Sri Lanka. And Mr. Ambassador, where are you from?
Oh, but I'm coming from Kandy originally, but at the moment, I mean,
in the central province.
That's right.
Right, where we have the elephant orphanage.
Yes, that's closer to Kandy. Yes, that's in Kegol. The Kandy is, I think, the second. That was the last royal capital, and one of the most beautiful cities in Sri Lanka. I'm sure you have been to Kandy. And
yes, of course. I mean, when Prasanjit, you spoke about the 3 international airports. I understand that, of course, one is in Colombo, one is in Hambantota, right?
Matala. Yeah, it's closer to Hambantota.
And where is the third one?
That's in Palali.
Palali, Jaffna.
In Jaffna. Okay.
Yeah.
And usually the surfers are in the south of Colombo.
Sorry?
The surfers, the people that are coming for surfing.
Yes.
And also
that would be in between. If you go right down, you will see Gaul.
Uh-huh. And that's
From
there.
Gaul, you will see another point down in Matara.
Matara is here.
Further down on your map.
Ahangama.
Yeah. So in between those 2 stretches, Ahangama, you get Kabalani, you get a number of beaches. You also get a point called Arugambe close to Batikilo. That is on the east coast.
And
that is one of
point there.
That is one of the best.
Yeah. A little bit further up.
That is one of the best
surfing destinations. That's correct.
Yeah, if we cannot travel, at least we can enjoy the map and think that we are in Sri Lanka.
In fact, Arugambe is one of the best surfing beaches in the world. I think, I'm not sure, Prasanjit, we had a world championship of surfing down there sometimes back, right?
Correct. In 2017, I think we had a international competition, not a world championship, but an international competition.
Right.
So, because Arugambe is, as you rightly mentioned, considered to be one of the most challenging surfing spots in the world.
Yeah, it's among the top 10. It's among the top 10 surfing beaches of the world.
Good. Gentlemen, our webinar comes to an end. I'd like to pass the closing remarks to you, Mr. Ambassador.
Thank you very much, Anat, and for all the participants for their time dedicated to Sri Lanka today. And I also thank my colleague, my friend, Mr. Prasanjit Vijaytilaka and his team who join us from Colombo, from the Board of Investment. And I'm sure we can organize, as you said, a business delegation when it is possible to travel. I'm sure we can do something regarding that during this year, or maybe perhaps middle of this year, and also we will try to organize another seminar or webinar towards middle of the year on investment, and maybe we can we can invite our Export Development Board also to do a joint session on opportunities in trade and investment together with BOI. Thank you so much for organizing and hosting the event today. And also, I must thank Israel Asia Chamber of Commerce as well.
Thank you.
Hopefully we will be able to see a better year this year in terms of business and investment.
We're starting to be optimistic, so this is good. I'd like to thank you, Alon and Sid, for joining us, and also in the background, Maria, that was coordinating with us and is a partner, and I look forward to more partnership with you. I'd like to thank our friends in BOI, and I hope to meet you in person this year in a few months. Thank you, Liron, from the Israel Asia Chamber of Commerce, and Mr. Dani Catatrivas from the Manufacturer Association of Israel. I'd like also to mention the Federation of Chambers of Commerce that collaborated with us for this event. Thank you, Shmulik Kenigsberg, for sharing with us your experience. We have recorded this session, and we will send all of you this recording and the presentation of BOI if you can share it with us. And please join our Chamber of Commerce. We have many seminars, activities, when possible, also business delegations to Asia. And you are all invited to become a member in our chamber. Thank you. Have a good afternoon in Sri Lanka, good day in Israel, and thanks for joining. Goodbye.
Thank you. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Look forward to seeing you.
Very soon.